Well, this is Barry Jackson. I have somebody I've been listening to for a while. Every time I get a chance to listen to the Billy Cobham George Duke Band CD or some Weather Report or some Santana, I can always hear this particular individual on bass, and I think he's also done some things with a lot of other musicians as well. See, he's played with Bob Weir, Chuck Mangione, George Duke, In Vogue, Wayne Shorter, Sergio Mendes, Tony Williams, Joe Williams, Gregory Hines, and I don't know who all else he hasn't played with, and we'll get into that later. But this man is a bass player that I've always enjoyed, along with people like a Stanley Clarke or a Ron Carter, or some of the other fantastic bassists. Mr. Alphonso Johnson, how are you today?
Great, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm just pleased as punch. You kind of got started out of Philadelphia.
Yes, I was raised and born in Philadelphia.
You originally were a trombone player?
I was originally a bassist, but I switched to trombone because when I went to high school, there was no school orchestra. They only had a marching band.
I see.
And I wanted to pick an instrument that would allow me to continue to read in bass clef. Okay. So trombone seemed a natural choice for me at that time.
Well, I mean, and that's important, as my listeners know. You're talking to an ex-trombone player, so...
Okay.
So I guess bass would have been when I had to stop playing trombone. I guess bass should have been the natural progression. But you did a lot of work with Woody Herman once you were ready to go professional, huh?
Yeah, that was actually my first professional job on the road. Was the Woody Herman Young Thundering Herd was called at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and where you had come to school out of what school?
Well, I graduated from the Edward Bach Vocational High School, and I studied and learned the skills of being a woodworker, a carpenter. My mother really thought it was important that I have a skill, upon graduating high school. Mm-hmm. But around 6th grade in elementary school is when I really discovered the bass. And so it was always kind of a hobby or something that I would do on the side.
Okay, and but was it just at that particular high school you really concentrated prior to your professional career, or was there another school that you went to?
By the time I got to high school, I was already playing around Philly, all around town with different people. And when I met a saxophonist named Gregory Herbert, he told me that there was an opening in the Woody Herman band and that I should come and audition for it. So Woody Herman took Gregory Herbert's recommendation, and they just flew me out to the first gig. And I think that was in Las Vegas. That was my first big professional job.
And it seemed like something I remember about the Woody Herman Orchestra. Normally, he picked a lot of his people out of North Texas State's music program to play with him. Were very many of them part of the band when you joined?
I specifically remember John Thomas on trumpet, because John and I obviously go back. I still know John. He also teaches with me down at USC. Okay. So we've stayed in touch since working at the same place, and we often get together and talk about the old times and Woody and all the guys in the band.
Okay, and I know you played with Chuck Mangione, and I'm not sure what periods, but I want to fast forward a little to your experience with Weather Report. How did you get with them, and what did they feel you brought to the group when upon joining and replacing Miroslav Vitos on bass?
Well, I'm a firm believer that everything is connected, and when I played with Woody Herman, the drummer in the band was Joe LaBarbera, and Joe was a friend of Chuck's. So when Steve Gadd and Tony Levin moved from Rochester to New York City to become session players, Chuck needed a drummer and a bass player.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe and I both joined Chuck's band, and while we were playing with Chuck, we were in Philadelphia, which is my hometown. We were opening for Weather Report. And at that particular gig, which was at the Philadelphia Music Academy, the Academy of Music in Philadelphia, nice hall, it's kind of a orchestra, opera type of hall.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, my family was there, all my high school friends were there, and as I was playing a bass solo, I happened to look over to my left, and on the left side of the stage was Wayne Shorter.
Mm.
So that's how I got the offer to play with Weather Report.
And you played with them for how long?
Now you're asking for some math, huh? I think I was with Weather Report about 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay. So, and I guess the first album that you recorded on with them was what, Mysterious Traveler?
That's correct.
Okay. And at what stage did you, and how did it come about after from there? And you did some writing on I know on Mysterious Traveler, Cucumber Slumber, and what else was, I don't remember the other.
Yeah, Haran Nu.
Okay. And from there, you pretty much when did you meet up with George Duke and Billy Cobham?
Again, we were out on tour. We did a tour. Let's see. Actually, no, that's not right. Let me think back. So we were recording Tail Spinning in the studio album with Weather Report. And during that recording, Ndugu was asked to come and play drums. And so through Ndugu, I met George Duke. And that's how that came about. So George and I were talking one day, and he said, I heard a rumor that you're ready to leave Weather Report. And I said, who started that rumor? He says, I don't know, but that's what I heard. I said, why? Are you asking me to join your band or something?
Mm.
And he says, as a matter of fact, yeah, Billy and I are putting something together. And so I went down to Washington, D.C. to hear the band. At the time, they had Dougie Roch playing bass. He was the former bass player with Santana.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked what I heard, so from one thing led to another,
And what would you say you took away from the experience with them, and that propelled you on forward to maybe to your next project or next series of projects? What would you say you got out of that experience with George Duke, Billy Cobham?
Which one? The one with Billy and George, or the one with Weather Report?
Well, let's go with both of those then.
Well, that's an interesting comparison, because here you have two groups with each group had two leaders. Mm. And the thing that was unique, I think, about Weather Report was Wayne Shorter and Joe Zawinul really balanced each other. They were like yin and yang. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When one was being aggressive, the other one would be passive. When one was being passive, the other one would be aggressive. When one would go left, the other one would go right. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like they were constantly in sync, musically, on and off stage, even as people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Billy Cobham and George Duke, there were a lot of similarities, and it just created a different type of music,
Okay. Yeah, because it seemed like to me, with Weather Report it seemed, and I don't know if I'm using the right terms, and you can feel free to correct me on that. It just seemed more of an R&B or funk groove with George Duke, Billy Cobham.
Well, you had a lot of collaboration with Weather Report,
mm-hmm.
Even collaboration that may not have been acknowledged as far as writers on songs. It was always a team effort, team spirit, even if it was something that, say, Wayne bought in a song, Sometimes Joe would say, hey, Wayne, do you mind if I try this? Or Wayne would say, Joe, how about if I add this? And it would become like a major theme, or you know.
Well,
And it wasn't that way. I think with Billy Cobham and George Duke, they wrote separately. They didn't collaborate a lot as writers, but they more collaborated like Schofield and I did on stage. We all contributed to the music that way.
well, let me ask you this: which one of the two bands? Which one do you think seemed to sound more like they were influenced by Miles?
Oh, definitely Weather Report.
Okay.
But
okay.
I know that Billy and George were huge. Everybody was influenced by Miles.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that one was and one wasn't, but it's. I would also be as bold to say that Miles was influenced by Weather Report, because I know that Wayne Shorter wrote for Miles,
Right.
and so did Joe. So there was a mutual. I'll never forget it when Weather Report. We played at the Bottom Line in New York. Miles came out to hear the band, and Miles rarely goes out to hear anybody in New York. So I think there was that. Obviously, they respected Miles as a leader, but he also respected them.
Yeah, I was just because we didn't touch on this. I had in our conversation with John McLaughlin, we didn't touch on that, but I know that Miles really did take in a lot of what was out there, and incorporate into what he was doing. I mean, and I don't mean just, and in saying that, I mean as far as what was out there as far as modern music was concerned, instead of which went into what he did to more or less, John considers that Miles was the godfather of fusion, but it was obvious that what he was the godfather of was influenced by other things that he heard outside, even as going as far as what Jimi Hendrix was doing.
Exactly, that's right.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, you had 3 solo albums you put out. I know Moonbeams, and I don't remember the one in the middle, but the last one was Spellbound. And on there you had you used an instrument besides bass and electric and upright. You used what was called the Chapman stick. Talk about that a little bit. What the Chapman stick is.
Well, the Chapman stick was invented by Emmett Chapman, who is a musician inventor who lives here in Southern California. And it's a 10-string touchboard. It's a piece of wood that basically has 10 strings, 5 bass strings, and 5 melody strings. And you play it percussively like the piano. You strike the strings. And when I saw Emmett playing at a nightclub, I was just fascinated. And I thought, man, I want to learn how to do that. So that's what started my adventures on the Chapman stick.
What of your recordings? What songs do the Chapman stick most prominent on? Oh man, that's a difficult question to answer, because now I have to go back and remember which songs I recorded. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to be pop quiz time, but
that's all right. That's a difficult one.
Okay, well, then you can say pass, and we'll come back to it if we have time.
All right, I'll pass on that
one. Who would you say, with bass-wise, who would you say, who were your influences? Who really inspired you to go further with bass?
Oh, wow. There's a long list. Definitely Monk Montgomery, Ray Brown, Ron Carter, Scott LaFaro, Jimmy Blanton. Oh man, a lot of people. Stanley Clarke, of course. Just a lot. I listened to a lot. I mean, I listened to Tony Williams as much as I did to Ron Carter when I used to listen to Miles Group. And he influenced my bass playing as much as anybody.
I see. Well, how so, with him being a percussionist?
Just his sense of time and rhythm, and his sense of his imaginative creativity was just. I was always in awe, So I'd be listening to Ron, but then I'd how could you not listen to Tony?
Yeah.
So I kind of would try and absorb both, and I had, when I got to play with Tony, it revealed a lot to me.
Okay. Well, let's see. At some point, at what point and how did you meet up with Carlos Santana and become a part of his group?
Well, like I said, life is a continual thread of events. So, Ndugu, the drummer that played on Tailspin and introduced me to George Duke, was also part of the Amigos record that Santana did. And Ndugu introduced me to Carlos. They played a concert in Philadelphia, and Ndugu invited me down. And it was really weird. I'm standing backstage, and, of course, Carlos and Ndugu introduced me to Carlos before they went on. I'm just kind of standing back to the stage, and then Carlos goes out to the front of the stage at the Spectrum, I believe it was, big, huge amphitheater, and says, "I'd like to introduce you to a friend of the band." And he calls out my name, and it was like one of those out-of-body experiences. I heard my name, and I'm standing there applauding like it's for somebody else, and I realized, oh my God, he said my name. So I went out, and he introduced me to the audience, which was kind of strange, but that was my first experience with Carlos Santana.
Well, did you have your axe with you at the time?
No, I did. That would be, that's something I never do. I never assume anything like that.
Okay.
I'm going to play or qualified to play or I'm going to be invited to play. That's a big assumption I never take.
And how did that? What benefits do you get out of that experience playing with? Besides obviously getting paid.
Well, I got an enormous education in how to play and listen to Afro-Cuban, Latin, all kinds of music. I was able to be on stage and travel with and become friends with one of the master percussionists, Armando Peraza, and that's something you can't learn in any school except being there.
Okay, well,
so I got an amazing education through that band.
And you also got to play with one of my favorite keyboardists too.
Yeah,
Chester Thompson.
Yeah, Chester Thompson.
So
CT.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what they refer to him as. I just want to know also at some point. Let's see so you did some things with Jazz Is Dead and the CBS All Stars, back with Billy again, and who was on guitar? Was Steve Kahn?
With live
CBS
record with Tom Scott, yes, Steve
right,
Kahn.
Which is a CD I've been trying to get for the last 20 years. I've had a tough time because, of course, we play Bahama Mama on the air here, your studio version, but I'd like that live version. And
I'll send it to you.
And I've been trying to find "And Here's the Star," the from Live Mother for You. Billy has tried to direct me to a distributor and to no avail, but nevertheless, I just don't think a fusion collection is complete without Live Mother for You.
That's a great record.
Just the way you all interacted on that one was just, once I do acquire it, I think my listeners will definitely agree with me. But go ahead.
We'll see if we can help make that happen for you.
I appreciate. Okay, you're doing some teaching now, and where you say you're at I almost said UMKC, USC, University of Southern California, and what exactly are you teaching?
I direct a jazz combo, and I'm also teaching electric bass.
Okay. Okay. And one of your classes is groove therapy?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have a master class coming up in September.
Okay.
And it's, a lot of musicians don't really understand terms like groove and pocket, and it's important to go back and study the history of the music to understand where it all comes from, which to me is the church.
Right.
And then you have a further, a better grasp of the intention of the music and how to capture it.
Okay. All right, and of course you still do a lot of seminars and those type of and around, and you've done them all over the world. What's your next project that we might be able to experience, where we might be able to experience your artistry?
My next project is trying to talk Billy Cobham, George Duke, John Scofield into doing another tour.
Cool.
Before we're all gone off the planet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I've already spoken to George, and he's on board. So my next contact should be Billy Cobham.
Okay.
And then I'll contact Scofield. That's what I would like to do. I would like to see this band in particular created something really unique, And I know for a fact a lot of my students, as well as people that contact me, fans, have constantly asked me, is there a possibility of this happening again? So I've kind of taken it on as a little personal project of mine, and we'll see what happens. Okay.
Well, listen, I thank you for taking the time that you have, and I know you have a sound check to go through, and and a gig to play, and I never want to get in the way of somebody doing what they love to do, and certainly for a living. And I just want to thank you very much again, Mr. Johnson, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much, man. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Take care now.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.